especially thank Lane for hosting this event, and for Lane and Tillamook Bay and the work that they've done in their partnerships has really been an impressive approach to getting ahead of the curve on trying to understand how we might begin to work together throughout our educational sectors and throughout the state of Oregon. I think it's a really great model that they have brought and that we can all learn a lot from. And so thanks to all of you. I also wanted to make sure that I thank my fellow presenters for bringing this information to all of you, and thank all of you for being here today and taking your time. And one of the things that I really want to emphasize about this larger grant project is that it's really about trying to encourage more collaboration and alignment between our various educational sectors. And particularly in the presentation that we just heard about Smarter Balanced, some of you on the post-secondary side may be wondering, how does this fit in? How does this tie in with post-secondary issues in mathematics? And this is one of the key questions that Corda College is trying to address, is really looking at how is it that the Common Core that's being introduced within K-12 as a model for preparing students for college and career readiness, if post-secondary comes to the table and begins to answer that question and begins to take up that question of, is this really something that's preparing students for college readiness, for career readiness? And so really what we're trying to do is to invite the conversation as much as anything else. And so understanding what's going on in the changes that are happening in K-12 and how that may relate to the changes that may be coming within post-secondary, I think is really key for us. This project is part of a larger grant that 10 other states are working on as well. And the funders who chose the states who are working on this grant chose a variety of kinds of states. Some of them are having the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, and some are part of the Park Assessment Consortium. Also, some are very centralized education system states, and some are very decentralized and local control, as we are. So it's really a mixture of state types, and what we're all looking to do is learn from each other, as what we see happening in the Common Core, where so many states are coming together to try and introduce a similar kind of curriculum and a similar kind of expectations. So too, we also recognize that there are unique flavors that we need to pay attention to and that we want to keep in mind. And so the funders who are encouraging this kind of conversation between our sectors are really looking to us as models for what does it look like to begin to work together? What does it look like to begin to invite post-secondary and secondary systems into a common conversation about what constitutes college and career readiness? Because if we know that the Common Core is really trying to get at a level of preparation for all students and providing a common ground for all students, then the key question for post-secondary is, how do we see that? Do we agree that that's something that's preparing students adequately? And so overall, what this project is looking at is that we can have a common statewide definition and understanding of what we mean when we talk about college and career readiness, so that we're all on the same page. If it's true that as a post-secondary sector, both the community colleges and the universities, as we're looking at the Common Core and as we're looking at the Smarter Balanced assessments to understand what it is that students are being prepared for, if we do see that those are adequate levels of preparation for credit level classes in college, might we consider the Smarter Balanced 11th grade assessment as a kind of indicator for college readiness? What might the role of that assessment be in informing placement decisions? What might the policy changes that need to happen in order to provide more seamless transition for students coming out of high school and into post-secondary? What kinds of changes might we need to make? And also, if we think a little bit more broadly than just the Smarter Balanced assessment, if we think about the Common Core, particularly for the community college sector, I think there are a lot of tools that can be very rich and very helpful in rethinking how we approach developmental education courses and sequences and understanding. So I think that there's a lot here that both sides can begin to dig into and have conversations about and try to understand where we're all fitting together, and really getting at that for the purpose not just of aligning our sectors, but really trying to provide a better foundation and a better sense of transition for students throughout their educational processes. So as I said, in terms of talking about college and career readiness, what we're really looking for is a sense of consistency, that what it is K-12 is really trying to prepare students for is meshing with the expectations on the post-secondary side, and to identify where those gaps and misalignments might be so that we can begin to address them. And so we imagine this being really an iterative kind of process that happens among within institutions and among institutions at a regional level and at a statewide level as well. And I'm not going to, I know that in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of focus on the shifts and on the smarter balanced assessment, but one thing that I really do want to emphasize is that the kinds of shifts that we see happening in the Common Core for mathematics, I think can be a really great example for us in thinking more broadly in terms of what may be needed in our educational system in areas like coherence and making sure that students understand what it is that they're actually doing when they're applying formulas, when they're applying functions. What is it that, how do all of these pieces fit together in a coherent kind of way? How do our educational systems themselves also fit together in a coherent kind of way so that we can begin to address achievement gaps, so that we can begin to address things like developmental education and so on. One thing that I want to mention very quickly is that, as Kathleen and Holly mentioned, Smarter Balanced released some sample items this week, and beginning next week the Assessment Consortium is hosting a couple of webinars particularly targeted toward post-secondary education on math and on English language arts to better understand what these changes are and to better recognize how this might inform our own practices and what might need to change at the college level as we begin to make changes in what the K through 12 expectations are, that we also begin to think about how does this inform what comes later, how does this inform what college algebra is, and how does this inform what our sequences are. So we actually have a website set up on the OUS page, secure.ous.edu, that today actually is the last day to sign up for the webinars that we are hosting in institutions, but you can still watch them individually. And if you are interested in that, please catch me and give me your email or send me an email and let me know, and I'll give you that information, because I think this is something that really can be helpful in spurring the conversation forward. So some of the kinds of things for post-secondary that we're looking at is making sure that we are communicating what our expectations are for students coming out of K-12 and for students who are maybe returning students, so that they're much more prepared going into taking placement tests, if whatever the role of placement tests might be, so that they're more prepared not only with understanding what the outcomes of a course are, but what the expectations going into that course are. So this may also involve issues like aligning our curricula, understanding how our curricula fit with the Common Core, particularly at the developmental and early college levels, and thinking about how to work together to harness the kinds of expertise that we know we have in post-secondary to begin to inform the professional development also needs that teachers are having in the field as they begin to implement and integrate this curricula, and in particular with the mathematical practices. And I think that's one of the examples where Dev's work and the work that Lane and Tillamook Bay have taken on are really exemplary. So overall, really what we're trying to encourage is to begin to take up this conversation of what it means when we think more broadly in terms of the governor's education goals for 40-40-20, and we think about a P20 system and how we are all part of that larger whole. How can we begin to break down those silos between us and talk together? So I'll end it there. And that still gives us just a few minutes anyway for a little bit of a break. But if you have any questions, please, I invite you to come up to me during the break and throughout the day as well.